What's up, YouTube? This is the third video on Kyle's Global Weather. Today, we're going to be talking about hydrostatic balance. Just a quick announcements before we get into the video. I'm pretty happy with the traction we got on the last two videos that I posted. We got about like 40 or 50 views on each. So that's pretty nice. I hope that continues in the future. Um, I also want to just experiment with different kinds of videos, honestly. This one today is going to be educational, but sometimes we can spend the entire video just focusing on the weather event, or maybe we can even switch to short form content. I'm going to experiment with a bunch of different types of content over the next few months and just see like which one works for me, which one gets the most traction, and then like considering those two things and a bunch of different things, I'll try to see like what's the best plan for the future of this channel. All right, let's start. And just a disclaimer, I'm not a meteorology expert. I did a lot of studying on this, like for a few hours at least, to get it into a way where I understand it. I only have basic skills in meteorology and I just know calculus, physics, a few things like that at like, relatively basic levels. So I don't claim to be an expert on this. Also, this is something posted on the NOAA website. So I think this is like public information and I think it's fine that I use it for this video. This is just very convenient to use as a slideshow. But I think this video will provide lots of additional benefits, not only by just showing you that this exists and that this is important, but by actually breaking everything down. Because when I read the slideshow, it was like very confusing to me. I had to break it down a lot. Okay, so we can start. This first slide is basically telling us that the causes of air pressure. We can get into that a little bit more. Lots of YouTube videos already talk about air pressure, but basically it comes down to two factors: density and temperature. This is talking about one of the causes of density changing, and so we can really just ignore this. Is not too relevant to our video. It's just saying that there's a force above a slab of air, so that's going to increase the density in some way. The second bit right here is kind of what we're going to be focusing on today. There is a net upwards force that balances gravity force. This is called a pressure gradient force, and this arises due to the fact that air masses move from higher pressure to lower pressures. That is just a fundamental characteristic of laws in thermodynamics. And so when we move up in the atmosphere, right, we tend to have lower pressure. And so you consider any given slab of air, you have higher pressure below it and lower pressure above it. So the air from below is going to want to move above, right? Because it wants to equalize. It wants to get to the lower pressure. So you're going to have a force that's pointing up. But today, we're going to be focusing on one specific scenario. It's called hydrostatic balance. And we can look at the etymology of this term. See, hydro refers to any kind of fluid system. Air is considered to be a fluid system because air takes up the space of a container. Static is referred to zero acceleration. And then balance is just the general term for two different things that cancel each other out. This is the diagram that we're going to be referring a lot to. I came into this with the previous knowledge of physics, and I had to throw a lot of that out the window. With air and atmospheric sciences, a lot of these forces are hard to distinguish in terms of especially being an internal force versus an external force. These right here aren't necessarily forces, but they're rather like some kind of modulation of forces. We'll see that mathematically later. And just to explain the different things, this is just an air mass that's a height z above the ground. The bottom of the air mass has a pressure P, and the top of an air mass has a different pressure, which is just the bottom pressure plus the change in pressure. And we're just considering a cross section of air, which is just a vertical column, right, as you can see depicted right here. And then dz, that's like the change in height. It's like a partial derivative. Okay, so it explains it right here. So there's a force acting down. It's not necessarily a force because if you break down the units, you get kilograms over meters times seconds squared, which is not newtons. So I guess that's a synonym to call it that. But if we look at this term right here, we have gravity. Gravity is meters per second squared. We have density, which is kilograms over meters cubed, and then z is just meters, which is height. When we multiply those together, we got what I mentioned a few seconds ago. And because we got those units, there's other stuff that has those units. In this scenario, we have the different forces balancing each other out. And the top force pointing up is in the same units as the force pointing down. So we can say these are equal to each other. This right here is a partial derivative of P, and P is pressure, and those have the same units as this term we found up here. As I said before, pressure decreases with height, so this must be negative. Okay, this is a lot of what I said before. We can relate these two like this. And this law is fundamental in meteorology and atmospheric sciences. When air is in this kind of state, it is often resistant to change because it is not accelerating in normal sense of form. It can be extrapolated to find different relationships, and it's just a good indicator that the air mass is comfortable in its current position and just doesn't really want to be changed. So that's kind of the first segment of this lesson. We're now going to be extrapolating this to figure out a relationship between pressure in general. It's going to be a lot of maths. So if you don't have a good understanding of calculus, this might not be the easiest ride, but we'll give it a go. So this is just rearranging the equation, but we're considering a limit of z approaching 0. So that air is essentially infinitesimally small. That's what we're going with for this. Okay, now we're going to multiply both sides by those derivatives and then, convert the partial derivatives to derivatives. And we're going to make it easier for ourselves by calling density 1 over alpha. We're just going to assign that to a different variable. So now we're going to integrate it right here. We can see with an integral we have the top and the bottom. This right here is pressure at an infinite height, and this is pressure at z. This right here is the same thing, but with density. You'll notice, Kyle, what's the pressure at an infinite height? 0, obviously. It's outer space. Pretty much 0. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So with an integral law, you can distribute the fundamental theorem of calculus and find that PZ is equal to this relationship right here. And this is a very fancy way of saying that pressure at a height z is equal to the weight of the air in the vertical column of unit cross-sectional area lying above that level. Yeah, that's the end of the section. So if we go back to the diagram, just want to clarify the relationship here. Air is not always in this state. Sometimes it is the downwards force that overwhelms the upwards force, and sometimes it's the reverse. But this is essential to understanding, all the benefits I've mentioned before, and I'd just like to say another one, which is global weather patterns. This relationship is present in some air masses, and it's just completely not present in others. So we can dive more into that in future videos. Just let me know in the comments if this is a very interesting subject. Okay, well, without further ado, I'm just going to move on to our short New York City forecast. I plan to gradually incorporate different weather models as the time progresses. I will gradually teach you guys how different weather models work so that when I'm actually describing something, I'm not going to be incorporating much new information. So we're just going to keep this very simple. This is a map from last week. We explained the geopotential height anomaly. Geopotential will actually be explained in our next lesson. You could kind of see before there was a slide that was hinting at it. But anyways, this indicates lower pressure, cooler temperatures. You can clearly see, okay, we haven't described this yet, but this is basically the jet stream right here. See these isobars moving like that? So you have this northern flow essentially pouring colder air into the northeast, although it's not even that cold actually. It's like in the 40s in the tri-state area. So it's like it's just cooler than before is what you can think about it as. It has to be in there for a while for it to actually be cooler. It's a little bit more complicated than that. But anyways, you can see this persists for a few days, and this is going to be like the main thing to talk about for the next few days. This could be making some instability, maybe some light showers at some point, but you can see it really hangs on for a long time, and it's only until maybe even Saturday or Sunday this weekend where you see that higher heights dominating again. Not even dominating, they're kind of just there. And then this is really far into the future, but you can see extremely high anomalies like way east of the US. We'll see if that happens, but we can talk about that in the future video. It'll be a perfect time. Be a perfect time next Monday. Just to clarify and reiterate the relationship between that graph and temperature, we can look at this graph right here. You see at about noon today, it was about 47 degrees, sorry, in the tri-state area. As we see this trend continue, we see it's going to be about 45, 52 maybe, 41. These are about the daily highs. These are slightly below average. I'd say in the tri-state area it should be like maybe 50, lower 50s at this time of year. So that's certainly something. And yeah, I mean, it could get a few cool, chilly nights. Nice. A few cool and chilly nights. In the next week. If there's some farmers looking out there in the Midwest and stuff, this is about the time of year where you're going to be experiencing your last few freezes. But, obviously I haven't really given guidance to farmers before, but there's probably going to be another few freezes just before the season ends. All right, this is not, surefire being like, you see 32, oh, it's, mid to late March. That's probably it. No, just, it's probably going to get down there again, maybe once or twice more. And this is another graph that I brought up in the last video. You can just see that the green indicates rain, and there's not much of it until you get to this weekend. There's like some light shower activity. That's about it. Okay. Hope that was, really helpful in some way. Hope that was interesting to watch. I thought this was unique. I hope this did a good job at explaining it and like breaking it down into easy to understand parts. Because I looked at all the videos on YouTube. Some of the main issues I saw were, it wasn't really complex at all. It was just a very fundamental understanding of this concept. Sometimes it was very rushed through and it didn't really get into like all the different units and math and stuff the right way. There are a few outliers, but say a lot of them could be improved on. And so that's why I wanted to make this video. I feel like there's a lot of good illustration here. There's a lot of good step-by-step process. And I can post a link in the description if you guys want to take a further look at it. Post a lot of different lessons. All right, so yeah, this looks crazy. I don't know if I'm ever going to explain this. Yeah. All right. See you guys.